Code 160, presented by our good friends over at Fanduel. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Conor, what's up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. And we're fortunate enough. First of all, I want to hear your Savannah Bananas experience the other night. I'm curious. How was this?
You know, I think probably the best way to describe. First of all, it was a great time at the park. Obviously, a bunch of kids there had fun. There was a lot of Fortnite dances, a lot of stuff that I didn't get the references, which means I feel really old. But kids had a good time. The way I would describe it, it's like the Mr. Krabs meme where he's like looking around and like everything's scrolling behind him. That's kind of how I felt. It's like just a lot. It's a lot going on. They introduced them. You got like fog machines flying off. You got people doing the Fortnite dances with like a big speaker box. You got like a guy doing a backflip. You got a guy on stilts. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. It's kind of like not to break everything down into memes, but also it's like when Donald Glover walks in with the pizza. That's how it is like walking into a Bananas game. But entertaining, whole bunch of stuff going on. I could see the appeal as to why it's like sold out everywhere they go. It's good. It's a perfect August assignment when you got really you got something to do. You see the Bananas show up in Brockton. Went there, got some Cape Cod Cafe pizza afterwards. It's a good
Ooh,
day.
that's very good. That seems like it all worked out. I've never been. I didn't realize they did kind of their tour, but it seems like kind of the perfect thing to take the kids to on a a weeknight or something. What Doug Flutie was there, Johnny Damon was there. Everybody. It's just a lot of things at once. I feel for the people who plan that all out, it's got to just be
Yeah,
like just a lot of
I mean, it's
documenting
like
who's
they
coming
also
in.
have like a 2 hour time limit. So like after 2 hours, like they get like the inning, that's the last inning. After that, so like they
Oh
don't like
wow.
their big things pace of play. But it's like, man, that itinerary for those 2 hours was like just extensive, right? They had every single thing going on, every single like stoppage. There's no moment where I think you could be like, all right, look at your phone or anything like that. There was nothing
I'm gonna
like
go to
that
the
at all
bathroom.
during that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just
Not an option.
nonstop action. But it seemed interesting, at the very least. But some Bruins news has broken. I know it's August, but there was still some Bruins news that broke earlier this week. The Bruins signed John Farinacci out of Harvard. He was a third round pick from Arizona in 2019. Couldn't come to an agreement. That means he became a free agent. It's funny, from talking to a lot of college coaches, a lot of them kind of agree that it's almost better if you're a college player to not get drafted, unless you're, a first round pick or a second
Right.
round pick. But sometimes it's better to not be drafted because then you kind of get to pick where you go later on. Obviously, he did get drafted. Things just didn't really, work out in Arizona. He had a few teams on him, but the Bruins, obviously, he's a Dexter Southfield kid, Harvard kid. Of course, he's going to pick the Bruins. But it seems like this is more of a fit than just kind of taking a flyer on just any college free agent.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at his profile and he's probably regarded as probably the most sought after among like the college free agents. You got guys like, Jay O'Brien and Jake Wise and a few other players that have some skill, but probably in terms of a game that should do well at the pros, known as a, sturdy two-way centerman, has potential there. It makes plenty of sense for the Bruins to target a guy like that, especially when you look at just their lack of depth. I mean, you sign him, he's probably already regarded as one of your top two or three, probably center prospects in the system, right? Along with like Poitras and a few of those other guys. And again, I think it's important to like put on the brakes. Like as soon as he signs, people were like, "Is he going to be on the NHL roster?" I'm like, let's,
Give him the
he's 20.
C.
Yeah, he's 22. He's an advanced player, so he should be able to hopefully make a relatively smooth transition to the AHL. Again, every player's timeline is differently, but if you're the Bruins and you're just looking to stock up on your pipeline of talent down the middle, targeting a guy like Farinacci makes plenty of sense. And who knows, maybe he pops in camp, maybe he has a really good few months of AHL action, and then carves out a bigger role up in the team. Again, it remains to be seen where exactly these guys kind of fall in. But if you're the Bruins and you don't have a lot of draft capital, you don't really have the means to really restock your center prospect kind of pool organically through the draft, going this route, which they've done time and time again with college free agents, guys whose draft rights expire. It's a smart move, right? If you're going to invest or try to outbid or outmaneuver other teams to get these young players on the market, targeting a guy like Farinacci with his skill set, his position does make plenty of sense.
Yeah, to me, this makes a lot of sense, just given his style of play, the two-way. I know he had 61 points in 79 games at Harvard. And again, I mean, it's sort of, it also gives sort of I know there's not a lot of organizational depth at center, but you have a lot of guys, it feels like, in the system, like a McLaughlin, like a Beecher, who could maybe use some competition. I know they're sort of competing against each other, but like add Farinacci to the mix, and suddenly you have some more internal competition, which is something that they sort of boast a lot about, and they like to sort of they like to have happen. Still, though, I think it's an indictment on the organizational depth in general that you can sign this guy right out of college and he's already your number 1 or 2 center prospect that's ready to make a jump. But again, I think there's value here. I don't think this is just any college signing. As I said, it's not taking a flyer. And I know he mentioned yesterday Patrice Bergeron was sort of his guy that he watched a lot of, which is a good sign. I think a lot of kids, though, from that generation watched Patrice Bergeron a lot as the center. How could you not?
I mean, I feel like that's like, that's right at the top of it in terms of like having a script to stick to. Signing with the Bruins, two-way centerman. It's right there,
Who was the guy from Pittsburgh that was doing the Bergeron wouldn't even be on the 4 lines for the
you would know.
I
thought you would know, Evan. You're Pittsburgh's arch nemesis. So
it's Mark Madden, right? That's the name, Mark Madden. Okay, Mark Madden would see like I imagine Mark Madden asking prospects, being like, "Did you watch Sidney Crosby growing up or Patrice Bergeron?" If they say Bergeron, just like, knocks him out cold.
That's like the what do they used to always do for like the Stanley Cup final? I think maybe it was Hockey Night in Canada. It was one of those programs up there, but they would have the thing where it'd be like every player on the roster to have like their own like player card, like video, and be like, "Hi, I'm Patrice Bergeron. I'm from such and such, and my favorite player growing up was XYZ." And like forever, like when you got to like 10 around that time, it's like, all right, Joe Sakic, Steve Yzerman, Joe Sakic. I'm sure like now it's probably like, again, you would think it would be Bergeron, but I know it's definitely going to be like Crosby. Like if they still did that now, it'd be interesting to see what all the different kind of names were. But Bergeron, I feel like though is a smart choice for a guy like Farinacci in terms of one, where he signed and what his kind of profile is if he succeeds at the next level.
It is interesting. A lot of the kids I talk to at the prep level or, who are getting recruited will be like, yeah, like I love Cale Makar. And I'm like, I grew up watching, Victor Hedman. And I'm like, whoa, like, what do you, that's your, like, really? Like, it makes me feel old. Soon enough, the kids are gonna be like, I grew up loving McDavid. And I'm like, you were born at, what were you born? Like, what the hell? Like, how did that happen? But it makes us feel very old because, when we were younger and you'd see Sakic or Yzerman, you'd just be like, oh, those are older players, whatever. But now it's like we're at that age where it's like, oh my God, Crosby and Bergeron. A lot of kids in this area though were Bergeron. I remember, I think it was either Will Smith or Ryan Leonard I was talking to, and they were like, yep, Bergeron's the guy. So I think that adds up. But yeah, Farinacci's interesting signing. Did I see somewhere he's the nephew of Ted Donato?
He is his nephew, cousin of Ryan. So again, got those ties. I think he's from New Jersey, but it's got a ton of connections already to the Bruins, which they love those connections, the Bruins, in terms of targeting these guys. So made plenty of sense in that regard as well.
They do love that. So it'll be interesting. I mean, again, wouldn't shock me if that's a guy who has a very solid season in Providence, and as you said, is up in February or March, getting a look somewhere in the middle 6. Nothing wrong with that. It's not going to get a game breaker, but maybe it turns into something. Nothing wrong with that. Speaking of people who could get looks in the top 6, we talked a lot about Charlie Coyle as a potential number 1 center, Pavel Zacha as a 1 or 2 center. But other than those two, because again, those are the 2 logical choices, but someone could emerge from camp. They could think outside the box. I know you sort of thought outside the box in your roster projection, putting Trent Frederic up on that top line with Marchand and Coyle. Is there anyone else, including Frederic, who you could see kind of moving into that top 6 that we're not really discussing?
Yeah, I think one guy that is, I think, probably the most intriguing player that they've added this offseason is Morgan Geekie. I think he's a guy that probably doesn't project, a guy who only has hit what's his career high? I think like 29, 30 points in the season. But I think you look at his skill set, and again, we've talked about it countless times with him in terms of his production, even though he only played, I think, like 68 games last year, average under 11 minutes of ice time per game, which is below guys like Foligno and Frederic. Like, that's really not a lot of reps to put up that many points. Maybe the Bruins think there's room to grow there. And we've also kind of talked about this before, like, Charlie Coyle may not be a top 6 center, but you put him an entire year with guys like Marchand or, DeBrusk, or if he was with Pasternak or something, that elevates their play. So if, Coyle doesn't mesh on that top line, I wouldn't be surprised if you see a situation where a guy like Geeky gets a look next to Marchand and, insert player there, right? DeBrusk, what have you. I think, our buddy Ty Anderson kind of mentioned this before of like, if Riley Nash can slot in for Bergeron and have him be on a line with Marchand and Pasternak and that line look great, like Morgan Geeky could be that same kind of player. Is he going to be a guy that you put him in the top 6 and he's going to be a 65, 70-point revelation? No, but if he's driving play, being responsible down both ends of the ice and gives you 45-ish points for what you're looking for in that role of just a guy that can slot in there, you'll take it. So, I mean,
Yes,
he's a guy that, he's a guy that I think is due to take a step forward regardless of where you put him. I think if he's not getting that kind of unexpected promotion up to the top 6, he could be a guy that, could slot in that third line centerman role. And then you've got him with guys like in Riemsdyk or Lauko or maybe a younger player like Lysel and Merkulov if they really pop during training camp. So he's a guy that I think wherever you put him in the lineup is due to, take another big step forward. I think he's a guy who's going to be a pretty solid player for them this year, kind of whatever role they have for him.
Feels like Geeky's an early favorite for sixth man. Or not sixth man, 7th player.
I feel like I know who it's gonna be.
Who are you thinking?
It's gonna be Lucic.
Oh, that would be so funny.
It's gonna be Lucic.
You really think so?
Yes.
Maybe.
I will, on this day, we are recording August 18th. I'll give you, what would you like, Evan? I will give you.
Oh, I like Kava.
Damn it. I was going to say a free trip to Sully's on me.
Okay.
But,
okay. I'm for that. I'm completely for that. So you'll say Lucic. And what do you like? You're a Dunks guy. So I'll give you I'll give you a gift card to Dunks. And I'm going to say Geeky. I say Morgan Geeky's the 7th player. I feel like I'm going to lose this one, but that's okay. So
I feel like I asked you, you had a clean slate of requesting anything, and the one thing you asked for was a Kava gift card.
Well, I know, because that's something we always joke about. So
yes.
Maybe we'll make that an inside joke, you know? Kava still would be near the top of my list. I love Kava. But Sully's I'm all for. No problems there. Get a hell of a lobster roll or a chili dog or whatever they got over there. Kava, that's an interesting pick for me.
I was like, wow, I gave him way too much leeway to like request anything, and I was like, oh, Kava. Shit, thank God.
I want a free trip to California. I want, send me to Australia.
It was like when Chara got his, I think it was his 1,000th game, and they gave him like the thing. One of the gifts was like a ticket to anywhere. It's like, you want to go to the fucking moon? Like, what is the parameter there?
They put him in Elon Musk's thing that they took to the moon. Exactly, like I want to be in that.
Right.
That was a crazy gift they gave him, because you can really go crazy with that. Go anywhere. Like,
there's got to be some little terms and conditions there. There's got to be like a little mileage counter on it or something like that. Who knows?
Yeah, a around the world trip to everywhere.
Yes.
But anyways, Chara could really done it. What did you know what he ended up doing with that?
Who knows? Like he probably ran a marathon somewhere or something like that. And like the guy always finds something to do. So give him props for that.
Yeah, credit due there.
Football season is about to kick off, and Fanduel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And frankly, that's the best part about Fanduel, is that you can bet on anything. You want to bet on how many touchdowns Mac Jones is going to throw this year? Be my guest. maybe how many wins the Bruins are going to have in 2023-24. Go for it. You can really do it all. So bet now on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/Boston.
It seems like, Geeky's a strong one. We've talked about Frederic a little bit, potentially being up in the top 6. To me, it feels like DeBrusk is a lock for the top 6. Marchand's a lock for the top 6. Pasternak's a lock for the top 6. Zacha's a lock for the top 6. Coyle's teetering, but let's say I'll give him that, right? On the wing, it feels like the real question is, do you put Frederic in there and try it? Or do you go with sort of the old reliable veteran in James Van Riemsdyk? And I think both have, there's solid arguments for both, because Frederic, you put him in there, you want to see what he's got, right? Give him a 15-game sample size or something. That's really you trying something out. Van Riemsdyk's sort of the safer bet. It is, if you put, because it changes things, right? If you put Frederic in the top 6, you're putting him next to Coyle. If you put James Van Riemsdyk in the top 6, you're most likely keeping DeBrusk and Marchand, putting them with Coyle, and then James Van Riemsdyk and Pastrnak with Zacha down the middle. Van Riemsdyk might be a little more reliable, but I am curious to see what you have in Frederic, right? Like, to me, in most seasons, I would say you want the reliable piece. You want James Van Riemsdyk in there getting you 20, 22, 23 goals, 50-something points, whatever, reliable guy. But this season, you want to try things. I think you really want to try things. And that's why I'm sort of in favor of give Frederic a shot. Try it. I know you and I have never been super high on him, right? But he's what you have. It's what you got. And he's been good next to Coyle in the past, especially last year. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose?
Yeah, I mean, I posted that lineup thing, and everyone's like, if Frederic's in the top line, like, we might as well not even watch this season. Which, like, all right, Debbie Downers. But,
fair.
But no, I think for Frederic, it's not even like the, throwing him into the fire and when you put him with Marchand and Coyle, like, you've got room to grow there. But I think for Frederic, it's all about, one, how well he complements Coyle, which you need to get. If you want to put Coyle and pencil him into that top line spot, you need to get him going and playing at a high level. Then also, it's kind of that domino effect, right? Like, if you look at just Coyle and Frederic, whatever the case would be in terms of how they complement each other, it works. Like, I had like the numbers up now. Last year, 649 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time together, Coyle and Frederic. Bruins outscored teams 35-18, 154-116 edge, and high danger scoring chances. Really good for a third line that also, don't forget, was getting a whole lot of D-zone starts. Like, not like they were kind of the shutdown line essentially, as they were trying to give more easier reps to Coyle and or not Coyle, Bergeron and Krejci. So you've got that situation. And then Coyle without Frederic last year, 420 minutes. Bruins only outscored teams 16-14, and opponents had a 94-75 edge and high danger scoring chances. I don't know what it is, but Coyle and Frederic together, it just works. So that's one thing there if you want to get Coyle going. Then again, you look at the domino effect of it. If that line can be a pain in the ass to play against, Marchand, Coyle, Frederic, puck possession, your kind of de facto shutdown line in that regard, the domino effect now of having DeBrusk back at his natural position at left wing with Zacha and Pastrnak, that's going to be a fast-paced line. You've got arguably the best, probably the fastest skater on the team probably in DeBrusk there. That can only help in terms of, one, getting him finally past that 30-goal threshold, and also getting the most out of, two other players you want to see thrive in Zacha and Pastrnak. And then by doing that, you bump Van Riemsdyk down. Like, Van Riemsdyk's a solid player, but it's almost like how we viewed, some players in the past where it's like, all right, you could be a really good 3C or an second line player. I think Van Riemsdyk's in that regard. And also, if you've got Zacha and Pastrnak and you really want to play with pace, Van Riemsdyk's not really the guy that fits in there in that equation. So if you put him down with Geeky on that third line and get him going there, I think it just, things start falling into place a lot easier the way that thing pans out. So it's going to fall on Frederic to play at a high level to continue to mesh and show that last year wasn't an aberration in terms of both his individual play and how he played with Coyle, and why that match, how that pairing just worked last year. But that's what I think it's, it's some of it, of course, is you want to see what a guy like Frederic has in a featured role. But I think it's so much more of how he complements the engine of that line and how much it should benefit the rest of the lineup in terms of moving Frederic up to the top line there.
You also create depth. Like you sort of create depth that wouldn't normally be there, right? Like having a reliable scorer, however you want to define score, 20 goals, let's say, somewhere around there on that third line, and James Van Riemsdyk, who's a veteran, who you can also put on the power play. So like just because he's not in the top six doesn't mean he can't be net front on the power play. And you have him next to Geeky, and that sort of will up Geeky's production. And so you have that. Like, again, we're trying to make something out of not a ton, but I do think that I am intrigued in that Frederic idea on the top line, or with Coyle and Marchand, however, whether that's the first line or the second line. Because as you said, if that Coyle line becomes sort of your, they have more D-zone starts, and your Zacha line with DeBrusk and Pastrnak has more O-zone starts. I mean, we're simplifying it down. We're simplifying it down a lot, but like you have the baseline of something there. Like that's still a playoff team. And then, if you want to do JVR, Geeky, and Lauko, or McLaughlin, or Brown, or whoever on that third line, and then your fourth line, you figure that out. Like, again, we're making it sound really easy, but I do think that there is something there with those guys. But to me, I feel like it comes down to Van Riemsdyk and Frederic is who you kind of put in that top six, at least to start. Even if Geeky is a great camp, I have a tough time believing he's going to immediately jump right into the top six. Feels like that's a guy who's going to play his way in.
Late November, early December, if something's going wrong, that's when you make that kind of switch there.
Absolutely. So we talked about Farinacci. Do you think there's any more roster moves in the pipeline? Currently sitting at 429,000 of cap space. You don't have a lot of leeway. Do you think anything else happens before the start of training camp?
I don't really think so in terms of, maybe another like younger, collegiate signing or something like that. But in terms of like trades or anything like that, I think this market's kind of gridlocked right now anyway. Check in January, February, March, obviously, when things should probably heat up again. But I don't see any other Lindholm trade or anything else like that right now. I just think it's, again, the Bruins think we're trying to be very active this offseason, but you can only do so much with the cap is right now. Like no one's really making that many moves in that regard. So I think this is kind of a pretty solid framework of the roster you're going to see going to camp and see how it plays out. And we both said it's going to be intriguing, interesting, see how it all pans out. But time's now to see what kind of the rest of this roster's got. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's really all we can do at this point. Conor, what can people look forward to from you over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe?
Yeah, we're going to be covered throughout these final weeks of the off season for the Bruins. Start looking at obviously the lineup projections. We'll look at younger players and how they can make a spot on the team going into training camp. We'll have stuff covered throughout beyond hockey. We've got Patriots, preseason, get into regular season, all that good stuff over at Boston.com. So please follow us over there. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all of that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky, presented by Fanduel. You Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your week.